Cageside with John Morgan.
And welcome everybody to another episode of Cageside with John Morgan. A lot to unpack episode of Cageside with John Morgan. Unless you've been living under a rock, there have been lineup changes across the board. There was an Apex card this weekend and a CFFC card that John Morgan was at as well. Without further ado, let's bring him in. You can follow him on X, John Morgan _MMA. What up, brother?
Man, what a crazy week it was with all the changes. I mean, we knew we had some things working. Then we got some surprises that we didn't know that were changing as well. And some main events on ABC. So just madness. And I'll tell you what, man, as this thing was unfolding, I'm like, I sure hope they still got cameras running around. And about a year from now, we get to see a new edition of Fight Inc. and see how this thing all came together, because what a wild week of changes it was.
Yeah, I mentioned this 2 weeks ago. I said my friend's wife, Melissa Gibbs, put some bad juju out in the air and saying this fight's not going to happen. And I was like, yes, it was. And then lo and behold, a couple days later, the press conference is canceled. Then me and you said, when there's smoke, there's fire. There was dead air, radio silence, and then bam.
Crazy, man. Crazy.
And I'm texting you all week, like, what do you know? What do you know? What do you know? And you're like, nothing.
And it wasn't looking good because nobody was talking. Like, that was the thing. That was the thing that was so weird about the situation. The silence or the lack of information. It was just more like, you know, we're feeling good. And I'm like, oh no, this is not going to happen. The longer it took, the more, because you just knew the rumors. There were so many reports out there that you knew that if Conor was fighting, and you and I talked about this, there's no way that Dana White would not be getting in front of some cameras going, the stupid media people out here have no idea what they're talking to. Don't listen to them. They don't know what they're talking about. And he wasn't. And when he wasn't out there blasting the media for talking about this stuff, that's when you start wondering, man, this probably isn't going to happen. And sure enough,
like, I smell smoke.
Lose. That's it. Is there fire? Is there fire perhaps?
Yeah.
We lose Conor McGregor. So
a lot to unpack, not only with 303, but with UFC on ABC 6 from Saudi Arabia this coming weekend. But let's touch on there was an Apex card this past weekend. Anything to talk about there?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it wasn't the biggest card of all time for sure. There were some entertaining fights on it, but I'm glad you said that, because I was thinking about this as I was watching on the plane home the other day. I wanted to ask you about it as the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and that was the ending with Tatsuro Taira, because I was a little bit confused with the technique. Obviously, you've seen it. You know, he moves to the back. He wraps the body. He's got the leg in between the legs. And then, you know, he's leaning back and off to the side a little bit. And he does it multiple times before ultimately Alex Perez's knee just gives out. Feel bad for Alex Perez. We could talk about that as well. But I was just curious, because I looked at that technique and I even tweeted about it, that, like, I'm still trying to process what he was doing. Was he trying to set something up, or was that the intent? Maybe not necessarily to completely blow the guy's knee out, but is there intent to put stress on it that way? Because as I watched it, the initial thought that came to me was like, there's no way he practices that in the gym, because, like, if you did that to a training partner, you know, they're throwing hands at you at that point, because it's clearly that could injure the knee. So I was just curious what you saw as you watched it. I didn't know if he was just making something up on the fly, if he was just trying to drag the action to the ground, ultimately gets the TKO finish out of the injury.
I don't think it's malicious, right? Like, I'm not going to sit here and say it's malicious. Now, is it reckless? Yeah, it's reckless, right?
You wouldn't do that to a training partner.
No, absolutely not. But it's the position in which it's done. So do I think it's just something he made up on the fly? I do, right? Because, yes, he was on the back, but he was on the back offset almost closer to the hip. Okay. Right. And that's how I wish we had a side-by-side right now so we could kind of break it down. Like, we're not that advanced here yet.
We'll get there.
But what he does is he kind of has a body triangle. He switches that body triangle to that leg, then going underneath the backside of the far side knee. Right. And so what he's doing is almost like a modified, like, butterfly hook to a degree, where he's elevating that leg. Now, you know, Perez only has one table leg,
right,
to balance him. Now, that could have been just as effective if you pulled him backwards. But if you pulled him backwards, you would never would have had the dexterity in your legs to get underneath that far side knee, right? So you almost had to be offset towards the hip. Now, if I'm going through it, there's a couple factors at play here. One, I'm guaranteeing he's thinking his opponent is going to hop, fall.
Right.
He pulls once, doesn't do it. Pulls twice, doesn't do it. Pulls third times, he's doing it. I think the hope is almost like when you're running a single or a double, right? You get them on one leg and you're pushing and it's hop before they go over. I'm thinking in my head, that's what he was thinking.
Right.
But you got to know also, like, is it dirty? I mean, no, it's not dirty. It's
a fight, right?
It's heck. It's a fight. It's reckless and heck. Like, I think linear kicks to the knees, I think that's dirty, me personally. Right?
Well, that's a debate you can have for a long time, right?
100%. But it's like, that's only meant to injure your opponent's knee, right? This, on the other hand, widely reckless, knowing that it can cause serious injury. At which the angle that he's pulling him down. But I think on the opposite side of his opponent would have been like, he was so like, I'm not going. I'm not giving it up. I'm not giving it up. So if you want to place all the blame on, say his name because I can't.
Tatsuro Taira.
Taira. Right? If I'm gonna put 70% of the blame there.
Okay. And
30% on his opponent because he could have conceded it and saved his knee.
True. Yeah, that's a good point, right? In the same way that, like, if you land on your head, but you could have let go of the arm bar, the triangle, that's on you. It's not a spite because you had the ability to let go. It's interesting. And I don't want to label Taira as a dirty fighter by any stretch. I'm definitely not trying to lay out that accusation. And by the way, even though it was an unfortunate ending, it was a brilliant performance. I mean, it was a great fight between this two. And I think Taira is absolutely the real deal, man. He is a future title contender. He is up there at the top. He's got some big fights to lay out. He is a talent. I was just curious because, again, you and I watch so many thousands of fights that when you see something that you don't see very often, I just often wonder what the mindset was. And unfortunately, because there was a bit of a language barrier, the post-fight question didn't really get down to the bottom of it. So I'm just really curious the mindset because it's not a technique that I've seen utilized a lot. Now, clearly, I don't watch a lot.
John, I'm going to disagree with you. The technique is, the more I've been going through it, like as you're talking, I'm like, this technique is used, but it's not used in open space.
Right.
We see it against the cage a lot.
100%. Just not out in the open space.
So that person his back is against the cage and he has his opponent's back. We see this where a guy ducks under, jumps back, and the other guy runs straight his back to the cage, which now your back is on your opponent's stomach. Your opponent's back is against the cage.
Right. So you're both there together.
And now it's either you're staying on the back or you're going to try and drag him down and you offset yourself to the side. And that happens against the cage. I see that a lot of times and people will kind of concede a lot of times there.
100%. Yeah, no, it's right. It's just like you said, being out in the middle and seeing the body pull from completely away as he leans back, trying to pull it down. It was just interesting. Is again, when we see unique applications of technique, I get excited by it, right? Because it's stuff, again, like we watch thousands of fights. And when you see something, again, I don't watch a ton of pure grappling competitions just because MMA is taking up so much of my time, but it's just not something I've seen a lot of. So I was curious, but man, bottom line is that guy is a contender in the flyweight division, man. If he wasn't on your radar already, which I think the hardcores he was, but he had been fighting on some prelims and, wasn't really getting the featured spots. Now he's in these featured matchups. It's good. And the flip side of that is, man, I just want to give a shout out to Alex Perez and hope that he's okay, right? Because Alex Perez kind of had this snake bit career where all these cancellations and withdrawals and scrapped fights, and it seemed like he was finally getting some momentum going, right? And he's just an absolutely good dude that was finally kind of shaking off those curses and getting things going, and now he's got this potential knee injury. I haven't heard the full details of that yet, but man, hopefully he's okay. I don't want to see the guy miss a year.
At first, I thought it was an ankle because he rolls over his ankle too. Right. And like I said, there's like one pressure point, which would be the leg, and which one's going to give out first if you are so heavy on that and unwilling to concede. But really talking about it, gosh, I love this stuff. I don't love people got hurt, but I love breaking down these techniques, right? And now that I think about it, like I see that on the cage often enough, and we even see it from when somebody's putting their hooks in, a lot of times they're going to so they're down on the ground, say guys on all fours, he'll put one hook in and drag them that way to the back and to the side. That's just almost the same thing as standing up, reckless to do it in the middle of the cage, almost, too much pride and or whatever you want to call it, too tough for your own good to concede. Like, I'm not conceding any position. Hey, good on you. I wouldn't either. But when you feel that probably on one or two and you feel that stress on that one leg, ankle, or knee, you know, maybe we're like, okay, let's concede it without injury, live to scramble this fight.
100%. It just made me laugh because, again, if you were doing that in a training mat, like literally everybody in the room would be like, bro, stop, calm down, stop, you know, because you could hurt somebody. So
yeah, and especially if I was tougher than the guy trying to do it, I would have beat the out of him in the middle of the training room.
That's it. That's what was unique to it. I was like, there's no way he practiced that. But again, that's what jiu-jitsu is, right? Like, I mean, it's the application. Like, things are never going to happen in a roll or a fight exactly as you drill them, right? I mean, the positions are always a little bit modified, a little bit adjusted. You're having to make up things on the fly. So it was cool. Like I said, it was an unfortunate ending, but it was still cool to see the technique. And I'm telling you, if you weren't sold on Tatsuro Taira already, man, hopefully you are now, because that kid is good. And just, man, we hope Alex Perez heals up okay.
Hope he does as well. All right, you ready to start unpacking?
Let's go.
All right.
What a crazy week.
Listen, I'm just going to rattle off names and I'm going to say they're out. All right. Khamzat Chimaev, out. Conor McGregor, out. Michael Chandler, out. Jamahal Hill, out. All right. So now you know where we're going with this episode. Let's start packing the unpacking, right? Chimaev, out. Illness. I read through some source that it ended up being food poisoning. I don't know how. Did you hear that as well?
I saw that same thing. It was like a training partner or a coach that mentioned that it was food poisoning. I did see that this morning. I mean, look, when you hear food poisoning, you think light, you know, I mean, like food poisoning can be deadly, right? So, I mean, we don't know how bad it was, right? So sometimes you might hear food poisoning, you go, guy had to pull out for food poisoning. Like, what? Like, people get sick sometimes. But I mean, you saw the picture in the hospital. You heard, I mean, Dana White was saying, you know, gravely ill, seriously ill. So if it was that, man, it seemed like it was a
and imagine if you're getting food poisoning. And let's just hypothetically say it was food poisoning. Right. Imagine you're a couple weeks out of a fight. These fighters are completely malnourished at this point.
Yep.
Right.
True. This is true.
And you get food poisoning and it happens to be a really, really bad one. Now your defenses are down already.
Yeah.
Then you get it. I mean, I can see how that snowballs into a very dire situation.
Absolutely. Not the way you want to be cutting weight. That is for sure. But yeah, man, you start talking about dehydration and you know, organs starting to shut down and all these things. So, man, incredibly unfortunate, right? And I mean, look, there's so much to keep talking about what's going on here, but I mean, let's even talk about Khamzat Chimaev just briefly. Gosh, you just worry about this guy, right? I mean, this is
number 6.
Yes, it's unbelievable, man. This wrecking machine that we've all seen the talents and we've all seen the skill, and he came into the UFC, and you're basically like, should we just hand that guy the title right now? Like, I mean, this dude is clearly going to beat everybody. He's incredible, and now he's had to deal with illness over and over and over, and he's had all these issues. And I'm not trying to cut the man's career short. I mean, obviously, there's still he's a young guy.
Yeah, you're not. He is though.
Yeah, that's it, man. But you start wondering, like, all this lost time and all these injuries, and we know he also has issues with travel, so it's not like every day on the calendar is a potential date that he can fight on. There's certain bits and spots, but man, I mean, only fought once in 2023, you know, hasn't fought yet in 2024, and now we wonder, will he? I mean, man, just so many question marks.
To compound that, right? You're a businessman. You're the promoter. You can only strap a rocket ship to somebody's back so many times. And we touched on this last week about, you know what? Are they willing to strap a rocket ship to him? He's not the marketable force that he once was due to everything prior to this. Now you add this on top of it. It's like he's not a household name anymore like he was a year and a half ago. He's just not.
Just absolutely not. I mean, listen, the hardcores are still going to go crazy for him, but you're right, man. That's what moves the needle, right? Is when you connect with the casual fan and people know who you are. And I don't know that he has that right now. So, man, I'm interested. The talent is there, man. The talent is so there. That's why everybody was so excited about that guy. He's fun, right? He says fun stuff. He fights in such an exciting way. But man, he's had a lot of health issues. And now you start to, you know, just wonder about him. You know what I mean? It's you know, hopefully he's okay. Again, we don't want to think just about the athlete. We want to think about the man as well. Hopefully he's healthy and he's okay and he's getting better. But yeah, you start to wonder where this career is actually going to go.
And so, I mean, gosh, I'm so disappointed like that the fight is off. I said this last week. This was a fight that I was clamoring for. I could not wait to watch it for the simple fact of like the immovable force meets the irresistible object, or
yep.
I said that
the other way around.
Yeah.
We know what you meant, but yeah, it's funny, right? Look back at our episodes a month. I mean, normally we don't like to go too far ahead because there's stuff happening every week, but you were so excited about this fight like a month ago. You're like, hey, I just got to mention it. We're only like a month away now at this point. So it's amazing. But in the same token, I want it twofold. Number one, can you give the UFC credit for picking the right guy to fill in Ikram Aliskerov? And let me just go right now and start giving a standing ovation for Robert Whittaker for being
what a G.
Robert Whittaker is that dude. You know, there's some people that say anybody, anytime, anywhere, but they don't really mean it. They mean like, well, anybody as long as I have the right time to prepare for them, and any you know, just certain situations have to be right. Because Ikram Aliskerov, if you're not familiar with him, might be a Khamzat Chimaev, might be a future champion. I mean,
well, let's break him down really quick. First off, Robert Whittaker says he agreed to the fight before even knowing who the guy was. Right? One, that's crazy but awesome. Okay.
Yep.
Number two, Aliskerov, 15-1, 11 finishes. His only loss on his record is to Chimaev back in 2019. And that was at the time, that was the wrecking ball machine. Chimaev, this was his fight before he got into the UFC. I think it was the fight that launched him into the UFC was this fight, right? Two undefeated guys. Probably, you know what? If Aliskerov, help me pronounce that name.
Ikram Aliskerov.
Aliskerov, okay? If Aliskerov would have won that, he may very well be in the Chimaev spot right now.
Agreed.
That's how bad of a dude this guy is.
And you look at what he's done in the UFC. I mean, he's absolutely just been destroying people. I mean, submission win over Mario Sosa to get himself into the UFC, knocks out Phil Hawes, knocks out Warley Alves. So this guy, I mean, he's incredibly impressive. He just doesn't have a name recognition, right? And I think that's why we're so, you know, praising Robert Whittaker, right? Because Robert Whittaker, with what he's accomplished in his career, they could have come to him with this name and he could say, listen, man, guys, I appreciate what you're saying here, but there's zero upside for me here, right? I beat this guy that nobody's ever heard of, and I say nobody, but you know what I mean. The casual fan doesn't know how things...
Even unranked in the UFC division because nobody will fight him. Like, let's tell the truth here. The upper echelon of the division reportedly is turning this guy down left and right. Reported.
And you get it. And that's why I said, like, with Robert Whittaker, if you heard that Robert Whittaker did that, you wouldn't be surprised, right? Because guys do that. They say, look, Dana, Hunter, guys, there's no upside for me here, right? Like, I beat this guy. Nobody's ever heard of him. What does that do for me? It doesn't move me forward. People just, because it could absolutely happen. Like, if Robert Whittaker starches Aliskerov, I could see a lot of people going like, yeah, see, that guy wasn't that good anyway, man. You know what I mean? Like, everybody got too on the hype train too early. So Robert Whittaker could easily say, what's the upside for me here? This doesn't do anything for me. Meanwhile, if this dude beats me, he builds his career off this victory and, you know, this catapults him to the top. So it's easy for guys that are up at the top to look at guys that haven't proven anything yet and said, no, I'm not giving the guy that chance. Like, there's just nothing for me here. But Robert Whittaker is not that guy. Robert Whittaker is the dude that says, who is it? Give it to me. I said I'm the best in the world. If I say I'm the best in the world, that means I got to be willing to beat anyone in the world, and I got to do it at any time. UFC needs me. I'm here. Let's go. I just cannot praise the guy enough. Not as if he wasn't already a legend enough, not as if he already did deserve all the credit in the world, but he really doesn't have any upside here, and he takes the fight. No questions asked. Let's go. Amazing.
A lot of times you hear the word fighter thrown around. He is a fighter's fighter. This is nuts for him to take. How dangerous. You're preparing for one guy, you know, and who theoretically is in Robert Whittaker's position. It's like a make or break fight for you.
Yes.
On literally maybe the biggest show that you will ever fight on. ABC, main event, network television. You're training to fight the Chechen wrecking machine. Oh, he's out. We're going to throw in a guy that nobody knows about, but allegedly is just a serial killer himself. Sure, I don't know him, but whatever.
yeah. I went from the Chechen to the Dagestani. Like, let's go. He's a killer, whatever. Let's do it. I mean, all the respect in the world, man. And it's crazy. I was looking, I was like, how old is Robert Whittaker at this point right now? 33. How is that possible that Robert Whittaker is only 33 years old? That is amazing.
48 years old, man. What are you talking about?
Right? You know what I mean? It's amazing.
A minute.
He has been around forever, man. But he's just such a guy, man. Just a fighter's fighter, man. There's no other way to say it, man. Like, there's nobody in the game that doesn't respect Robert Whittaker. And this is just one more feather in the cap. Even if Robert Whittaker turned this fight down, we'd be like, yeah, Robert. Yeah, I understand. Robert's paved the way. He needs to beat number one contenders. I get why he stepped out of this. No, that's not Robert Whittaker. Give me that guy. Let's go. Let's do this. Unbelievable, man. And look, man, I think it's a great fight.
If he wins this fight, he's going to be beloved. It could elevate him to a Dustin Poirier type level of being 100%, beloved.
100%. And with the fans, and of course with the office, not that the executives don't already love him enough, but I mean, if he's like, hey, look what I did for you. Now you got to figure out a way to get me in a title shot, number one contender fight, something along those lines. And they're going to go, yeah, we owe you one, man. You saved our butts. We owe you one. Let's go. You know what I mean? Just unbelievable. Great stakes, great fight, great stakes. And just that man deserves all the respect in the world. And I love it. Like you said, ABC early in the morning. I mean, I love everything about this upcoming Saturday in this card. So I know a lot of people, we're all disappointed that Khamzat Chimaev is out once again. But I'm telling you, I don't think the quality of opponent dropped here at all, and this is still an incredibly intriguing fight.
It's an intriguing card, my man.
Yes.
Pavlovich, Volkov in the co-main, Gastelum, D-Rod, Johnny Walker, Ozdemir.
Great fight.
I mean, what more could you want from a free card? That's a pay-per-view lineup I just gave you, by the way, too.
Yes, it is. And it's free. And it's free. And it's free. And it's early. I love it, man. I love having a Saturday night to hang out a little bit. So for me over here in Las Vegas, that main card is starting at noon, if you can believe that. 2 p.m. in the Memphis area, but on ABC. Love it. Love it.
All righty. So I came all prepared. I started preparing mid last week about breaking down Chimaev and Whittaker. It was gonna be fantastic. I'm just gonna tell you that. It was gonna be, right? I didn't have enough time to prepare for this breakdown, and nor does anybody really know who he was. So you guys probably wouldn't believe me even if we said it, and we couldn't go back to other fights that everybody would know to make our point. So we're just not gonna break down the card. We're gonna be fans. We're gonna watch it, but how can you not root for Robert Whittaker in this?
You just have to, just as being that guy. I will say, by the way, I hadn't looked at it until you said it. Obviously, I was super busy. We had back-to-back cards this past weekend with CFFC, MMA, and Muay Thai, so I hadn't really looked at it yet. So I'm looking at the odds for the first time. Have you looked at the odds for the new main event?
No, tell me.
DraftKings has Robert Whittaker as the favorite, but just barely, minus 148, coming back as Aliskerov is plus 124 as the underdog. And I just think that goes to show you, man, the type of respect. Like, Aliskerov is incredibly tough. Incredibly tough.
So in reality, what you're telling me is it's a pick'em.
It's a pick'em. It's basically a pick'em.
Well, because of getting betting going and, manipulating the lines to get these back and forths. Essentially, what I'm hearing with an unknown name and a very well-known name is that this could be very well is a pick'em fight.
100%. Because you would think, if you didn't think that Aliskerov had it's the odds makers are showing that this is that competitive of a matchup. Like as you said, no name whatsoever. You know what I mean? Most people aren't going to have any idea who the guy is, and he's dangerous. So I love it, man. That just goes to show I am excited for this card. I'm with you. Really, really fired up for this one.
Yeah, man. UFC 303, couple weeks away, and all right, I'm just going to read it again. Conor McGregor, out. Michael Chandler, out. Jamahal Hill, out. Oh, Alex Pereira, in. Jiri Prochazka, in. Brian Ortega, in. Diego Lopes, in. Anthony Smith, in.
Amazing. Amazing.
You want to talk about, like, everybody can stand on their soapbox and being like, Dana this and the UFC this, and they don't do this and they don't do this, and they try and monopolize and blah, blah, blah. Name me, like, no one could pull something like this together other than the UFC. Hunter, yeah,
on 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
On 2 weeks. On 2 weeks. You know, so here's the thing, right? And it's going to be hard for people to hear this. And it's such a weird thing to look at, right? Because you look at the card they pulled together, and you're 100% right, man. To pull that kind of lineup together on 2 weeks' notice is phenomenal. And if UFC 303 International Fight Week had been announced as this lineup from the start, we'd all be sitting here going, man, that's a good-looking card. Can't wait to get there. You know, look at Alex Pereira back, the champ, man. Look how busy he's staying. What a budding superstar he is. Now Jiri Prochazka gets his crack again. Amazing. You know, Ortega, Lopes, all kinds of fun. Anthony Smith always stepping in against, I mean, he's giving dudes chances too. He's like, I'll fight over. So we love it, right? You could make the argument that this card might have gotten better with the changes that were made, but you simply cannot overstate the impact that Conor McGregor has in terms of attention, in terms of buzz, in terms of he's just the biggest superstar the sport has ever had in its history. So it's such a weird spot because this is a good card, man. I'm not disappointed about this at all. I can't wait for this pay-per-view, but nothing quite matches up to the feel of a Conor McGregor fight week. So it's a tough one.
The excitement level definitely is dropped, right? In by default, right? Conor McGregor is on, excitement levels up, he's off, it's down. But in reality, for the future of divisions and the future of the sport, the card matters more now.
Yes.
Right? You know, we're gonna get we're getting two guys now in the main event. You know, Jiri Prochazka trying to reclaim his title from Alex Pereira. And these are two guys that people love. Like, everybody is huge. Both these guys. I can't wait to get this awkwardly awesome stare down.
Oh, remember the first time they met? What an iconic scene that was, with those two dudes just staring down each other at Madison Square Garden. I mean, that was absolutely unbelievable. And I cannot wait for this to happen again.
And look at the scenarios here, okay? Pereira wins. We can set up that Jamahal Hill fight again, because whatever, I think interest is generating towards that rematch.
I agree.
Both guys are chirping at each other now. You know, Jamahal Hill's doing a good job of leveraging the media to get himself back into that position. And truth be told, he's got a point, right? He does got a point, and we broke it down with like the 1.5 step distance closure when Herb. So he's got a point. Right? I don't think Herb Dean was necessarily wrong there. Pereira wasn't wrong, and
it's
Jamahal
just a
Hill.
fair observation. We said it at the time, right? You know what I mean? And I kind of hate that people. I feel like a lot of people are being critical of Jamahal Hill and kind of using it as a sour grapes type thing here. But if you watch that fight, there's no reason that wasn't a realistic discussion point after it happened. It was very much so.
So, it's very interesting we bring this up, because before we get to the rest of the card, I reffed a card in Mississippi this past weekend. It's co-main event. And I think fighters kind of know this little game now, right? A fighter in the co-main event, he got kicked in the nads. He grabs it, looks at me, tells me, I called timeout, and he goes, no, no, no. And I go, yes, yes, yes. Neutral corner, you neutral corner. He's like, I'm good to go. And I'm like, then why did you make it a point to then let me know you got fouled? Like, I saw it. I was going to jump in, but you went out of your way to do this. Now, I'm not going to say he was trying to close the distance for a knockout or this, that, and the other, but I learned something there, right? 100%. That I directly implied. Listen, if I call timeout, then it's not, you don't call time back in. I do.
I like it. And you got to separate them. I mean, and we saw this. And again, like, I don't think Herb Dean necessarily handled it wrong, kind of the same as you. You know what I mean? But
by rule, he did nothing wrong.
Exactly. But you know, I mean, just that little break in rhythm, that little break in focus, you know, it is potentially game changing. So if you're going to step in, you got to step in. You got, you know, it's you got to be all the way in or all the way out, one or the other. You know what I mean? And go ahead and break him and start him. So that's amazing. You know, you saw that, you made the observation, you got put in that situation, and you realized, nope, got to do this. Can't allow this to potentially happen.
Herb Dean jumped into my head immediately when he says, "No, I'm good," and he tried to push me out of the way. I said, "No,
nope,
one."
No.
I called timeout. You don't call time in. I think that I said it. I called timeout. You don't call time in. I do. Neutral corner.
I like that. It's just those things. It's just, this is such a weird sport, you know, that just like every situation isn't written into the rule books. You know what I mean? It's like, you've got to have experience and learn and utilize it. So good on you, man. But yeah, Jamahal Hill is trying to work back to that, and I love it. Jamal, I still so much to talk about, but are we a little happy?
But here's where
Jamahal Hill's out. Are we a little happy that Jamahal Hill's out? That maybe he's taking a little break, little time.
Well, here's where I'm going. Right.
Okay.
It's setting things up. And I think this is somewhat intentional, but I don't know. Jamahal Hill claimed that he was dealing with 2 tears in his meniscus, a sprained ACL, and a Baker cyst requiring significant drainage. Right? I read that because that's what he came out and said on his Instagram, I believe. So, but could he have fought through it? Maybe. Was he going to? Maybe, without all the lineup changes. But here's what it sets up. All right, it sets up perfectly for him to be the guy to face the winner of this, right? Because he never fought Jiri. That was the fight that we were supposed to see.
Right.
Before Jiri got hurt, had to vacate. That's when Glover and Jamahal Hill fought as a replacement in that.
Yep.
Right. And if Jiri wins, we get to see that fight. If if Pereira wins, these guys are going to start going after each other even more. And we get to see that rematch, which I want to see that rematch.
I do too. I absolutely do.
Was he out because of injuries, or was he out because he sees the writing on the wall as well? Is he injured? Yeah, probably pretty injured, but he probably saw the writing on the wall too. And he's like, this might not be the best time for me. Or the UFC said it might not be the best time for you.
Yeah, step aside, sir. This is not the best time for you. That's a great point. I mean, look, obviously you look at those laundry lists of injuries. I think it's smart. You know what I mean? I think already we were like, hey, man, I don't know if he should really be stepping in here, you know, in this fight. I don't know if this is the right time for him to get back. These are the right opponents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't hate the fact that he's stepping away either way, but you're right. I think the way it lines up, it just makes all the sense in the world for him, man. Step back, go rest, you know, because a win obviously would have helped elevate you and help push you toward that. But I don't even think you need to fight to get those offers. So why not go and heal up? I think it's whether it was a business decision or not, if it was a smart one. You know what I mean? If it was just the reality and there was no way he was going to fight, you know, because Jamal will fight. He's seen that. But if it was a business decision, it was a wise one.
Yeah. I agree, especially with the noise that is being created through him and Pereira right now. And then it's easy marketing. We never saw this fight. We were supposed to get this fight for the title. Now, 2 years later, we're going to get the fight between Jiri and Jamal. So it makes all this sense. But all right, let's stop talking about who's out. Let's start talking about who is in. And we said Alex Pereira, Jiri Prochazka. Was that first fight at 300 stopped a little bit? Was it 300? No.
It was, yeah.
No, 300 was Jamahal Hill.
Yeah. Yep.
When was it? It was like 296 then. I don't know. 295.
Let me now I'm going to have to pull it up because I can't remember.
Yeah.
295. You were right. 295. Madison Square Garden was 295. I can't.
Yeah, I knew it was a monster card.
Yep.
Square Garden always a monster card, right? Was it stopped too early? Was it not? Who knows, right? We're gonna see it again. And if you look at Yuri's last win, he's willing to walk through fire. He's willing to get his leg absolutely damaged to get off punches. And I'm just going to be very eager to see, is Jiri going to make any adjustment with these leg kicks? Does he have to? I would say probably, but is that going to benefit him because he is a charge forward, unorthodox, we're moving into your face type fighter? And you know what? We've never really seen Alex Pereira fight off of his back foot before.
Right. That's what I want to see. And that's what would I mean, you got to make some adjustments. I mean, you have to at least account for those leg kicks, right? Because they are devastating and they can end the fight quickly. But I don't want him to account for them in terms of, well, you know what? I need to make sure I stay back on the outside. I need to be checking those, and I need to be looking for my moments to counter. Like, I don't think that's what serves Jiri Prochazka right. Like, you may look at a fighter and say, hey, I think the best way to beat him would be this strategy. But I also think it's important to make sure that when you're assessing a fight, you're looking at your own strengths, right? And if you say, well, I think the best strategy would be to do, game plan A, but that's not really what we're best at. And that's why I don't think that's how Jiri performs best. So that may be a little bit counterintuitive, but yeah, I think you have to at least, address those low kicks, but I don't want to see it at the cost of losing aggression, because I think that's what matters. And as you said, it's something we haven't seen Pereira have to deal with much.
Right. I mean, and what we know from his last two fights is, his legs got torn to shreds in both of them. So now, if we look back just one fight ago against Ratchik, early on in those fights, his legs were just getting battered. They got badly compromised. And I'm trying to go off the top of my head right now, but did he switch stance and just keep coming forward and then eventually, break through from a switch stance? I think he did. So if I were to say, and I'm going to go back and watch that fight trying to break it down so we can do it next week. But what I would say early on is he may start that way, take that lead foot out of the equation, and who knows. But that's, hey, listen, anytime you're playing with Pereira, you're not just dealing with leg kicks. There's this big juggernaut of a left hook coming your way too. So damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah, it's 100%. But I think back in the day, the Pride era days of the vintage Mirko Cro Cop, right? But then you realize, what again, it's kind of counterintuitive. We talk about like jiu-jitsu, a lot of times it feels like you should pull when you need to push, and you need to lean back when you should be leaning in, etc. And I think it's the same thing. It's like, bro, you got a devastating striker like that. You're like, oh, well, I need to stay back outside of his range. It's like, no, actually, you're probably better off if you go push forward and crowd that guy and don't give him the space to utilize his weapons, and don't give him the range that he needs to do that. And I think that's what Jiri Prochazka is great at.
Adesanya, prime example.
Right? I'm just going to walk you forward. Like, I know you're an amazing striker. Guess what? I'm going to walk past it, and you're going to have to deal with me. So I love it. Again, Conor McGregor, you cannot replace Conor McGregor on a card. You just can't. I mean, especially, again, we talk about for the hardcores, this is a really good card. But, for casuals, Conor's the biggest star in the history of sports, so it's not going to have the same buzz around it. But in terms of quality of fight, in terms of impact, right? Because that's what we were saying going in. Is Conor McGregor, Michael Chandler a #1 contender fight? Not really. Anytime Conor McGregor's fighting, it could be a #1 contender fight, because that dude, they'll give that man a shot at any belt they can, because he's that big of a star. But it's not really a #1 contender fight. Now, as you said, this is real impact. This is real meaning in the divisions. It really moves things forwards. It's not just a spectacle. And I guess we'll knock on wood a little bit. It seems like we'll still get that fight at some point, although, and it's, man, I was the guy all along. I know, Eric, I've been the guy all along that people are like, that dude's never fighting again. I'm like, you shut your mouth. Conor McGregor will fight again. He's coming back. Don't you
dare say that in front of me.
Don't you dare say that. Conor McGregor will fight again. And I still believe, in his heart and in his mind, he is absolutely going to fight again, because that's who he is, right? But I am starting to get a little bit worried now. You know what I mean? Whereas before, I'm like, I don't even want to hear your nonsense talk. It's silly. Go away. You're a hater. Now I'm like, maybe you're right. And now you really start to worry about Michael Chandler. And I know Michael Chandler said, look, man, I got money. My businesses that I've set up are doing good. If I don't get this paycheck, I'm fine. I'm good. But, man, you do start wondering, like, how long do you keep waiting? If it's, if we get here in another month and we're still not sure, do you just sit around and keep waiting? I don't know.
Do we have any knowledge of the nature of the injury? Like, I know Chael Sonnen came out and said it was something with like his leg that he broke. There was an injury there. That's what we heard. But nobody's confirmed that.
Nobody's confirmed it. So there was, I think Michael Bisping had it on his podcast that he heard from John McCarthy, which obviously John McCarthy is, a legend in the sport. He knows people all over. But I have not heard official on record confirmation that that's what it is.
Right.
And if it is, it's very concerning. You know, you hope.
Well, that's where the potential never fighting again will come.
Exactly, because you hope it was something else, right? You all, he tweaked his other ankle and he felt like it was going to be okay.
Well, and he learned his lesson from the first time. Don't go in with an injury, because then that injury could be catastrophic at that point. So
that's right.
That's my hope in this.
That's my hope as well. Like I said, I'm still remaining optimistic, but before, where everybody said that guy's not fighting again, I just brushed it off and I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, the dude does anything he sets his mind to, and I believe his mind is set to this. But you can't set your body to things, right? I mean, the body reacts the way it does. And so this news does scare me a little bit. You know what I mean? Because if there was any way to be there, Conor was going to be there, man. This is International Fight Week. This is the biggest platform. He knows that this card was built around this matchup. You know what I mean? And so if there was any way to be there, I believe he would have. And so, yeah, I'm starting to get a little bit worried.
I agree. So now with Jamahal Hill out versus Carlos Ulberg, we need a new co-main event. This fight, I think a lot of people are going to look at the ranked third versus, I think Diego Lopes is 14 off the top of my head, right? They're going to be like, dude, you have a guy, a media darling in Brian Ortega versus a huge, white hot baby face in Diego Lopes, who looks like he could be the future of this division, which I think this fight was going to happen, but I think it was almost going to happen at the Sphere. I just have my spidey senses telling me that.
I can see that.
They bump it from September to, basically end of June, early July. That's a fun fight, man. Because this fight, if Diego Lopes wins, will make him a superstar.
Oh, unquestionably. And I was just looking at, it's almost a shame the way the calendar laid out, right? Because we always talk about, the greatest single calendar year in history, like who had it. Most people point to Shogun Rua and his run through the Grand Prix. But you look at Diego Lopes, steps in on short notice in May of last year, 2023, and loses to Movsar Evloev. An incredibly tough assignment, especially on short notice, the way he stepped in. But since then, has beaten Gavin Tucker, Pat Sabatini, Sadiq Youssef, and what an elevation. I mean, a life-changing span of 12 months. That was August 5th of last year was his first UFC victory over Gavin Tucker. He's had 3 straight first-round finishes. As you said, I mean, just an absolute baby face of a guy that everybody loves. He's got the haircut that everybody's digging, you know what I mean? But now, and look, those are tough names. Gavin Tucker, Pat Sabatini, Sadiq Youssef, all very, very tough names.
Yeah, Pat Sabatini's a stud.
Killer. He's a stud, man. Obviously, former CFFC champ, so I got to watch his development.
And he ran through him.
Ran through him. 3 straight first-round victories, man. And now Brian Ortega. I mean, we know Brian Ortega. We know the reputation in the co-main event of International Fight Week.
Look at this. Gavin Tucker, submission armbar, 1 minute and 38 seconds. Pat Sabatini, KO, 1 minute 30 seconds. Sadiq Youssef, KO, 1 minute and 29 seconds. He has literally fought in 4 minutes in his last 3 fights against that level of competition. 4 minutes.
Does not even have a full round in those 3 fights combined, right? How incredible is that? So then you come in here, and let's talk about the platforms where he did it at, right? We talked about UFC 295 at Madison Square Garden. We talked about UFC 300. He was on that card, and now we're talking about International Fight Week co-main event. I mean, this dude, it just epitomizes, though, in the same way that, we praise Alex Pereira and Jiri Prochazka for stepping in here, and you got to praise Diego Lopes as well, staying ready, taking opportunities. I mean, I know you want circumstances to be perfect. I know you want to control as many other variables as you can when you get into a cage fight, right? Because there's so many ways that it can all go wrong that you want to control every variable you can. But man, there's something to be said for just being ready. You know what I mean? And there's something to be said for building experience, right? This guy got into the UFC very, very, I would consider it late in his career for most. I mean, you don't normally see people 20 plus fights into their career before they're scratching the UFC. And that's what he did here. But he got that experience under his belt.
Not necessarily, but experience-wise, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's still not an old dude at this age. I mean, he's still very young and put it in. But yeah, amazing work, man. So yeah, hasn't even celebrated his 30th birthday yet. Incredible. But what a story this could be. And you know what, man? credit to Brian Ortega as well. Like you said, it was probably moving up. It was probably going to be at the Sphere, like you said. I think that's a good idea of potentially what was happening. But for him to, because he hasn't always been the guy, right? He hasn't always been the dude that's like, yeah, let's go. You know what I mean? He's had some times of layoff and some difficulties getting booked. So for him to say, you know what, man, new phase in my career, let's go. We're taking the chances. We're taking every opportunity. Let's go. Again, giving a guy a chance, a la Robert Whittaker, that maybe doesn't have the reputation yet, or at least the accomplishments that I have, but I'm going to go ahead and take this assignment anyway. Everybody in here that stepped in on short notice. Anthony Smith stepping in against a dude that is on a hell of a run right now, even though Anthony Smith had said, look, man,
and the guy was scary as hell.
Scary as hell, right? And Anthony Smith had said previously, like, hey, man, I know I'm getting towards the end of my career. Fortunately, he's put a lot of money in the bank, and fortunately, he's got a great commentating gig going as well, and all those. But he said, I know I'm getting towards the end of my career. I probably need to manage things a little bit better. I probably need to. And then they call him up, and he's like, nah, I'm just kidding. Like, hey, let's go. Yeah, I'm a fighter. This is what I do. This is all I know. Let's go. I mean, everybody here that stepped up on 2 weeks' notice deserves so much credit for jumping into a situation like this and truly helping save the card, man. They all deserve a ton of credit.
I want to go back to Brian Ortega really quick before we wrap this up. Does a win here, even though it's against a 14th ranked fighter, does a win here guarantee him a bantamweight or a featherweight title shot?
Maybe just in the fact that in the UFC execs' eyes, it does, you know what I mean? Because they'll feel like they owe him one.
Now, let's go back. He just beat Yair Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
So does I say that based on that, and then stepping up, taking on this this quote unquote young lion, even though he's not all that young, this young lion, this baby face, and I just see these like left and right now with Whittaker, now T-City, all these Dustin Poirier type situations coming. Like, hey, let's give the young person the shot. I'll be the one, and if I do, it proves that you give me the shot.
I think so. I mean, listen, Max Holloway made a pretty convincing performance, albeit at 155 pounds. He made a pretty convincing argument that he deserves a title shot next. We'll see what
I forgot about that.
You know what I mean?
Forgot about him flatlining, Justin Gaethje at 300, face down in the most epic moment in UFC history. I still stand by that. That was the single greatest moment in company history.
It's the only time I remember in my entire career standing up like that on press row and just being like, I don't ever remember doing that before. I remember being excited about some stuff. I remember some times where I put my hand and be like, whoa, or whatever. I don't ever remember standing up uncontrollably because my body made me, because it was so amazing.
While you're supposed to be covering things objectively.
Exactly. While I was supposed to be covering objectively. I mean, it was that spectacular moment. So, I mean, that is the one wrench I would throw them, because otherwise you're right. I mean, you could certainly make the case. Like, if, for instance, if Max is like, if Max is hurt or Max is like taking some time off. I mean, I know, he was on vacation and that sort of thing. If he's like, man, I can't go right now, and they say, all right, well, we're going to go Ortega instead. If he proves victorious, I think everybody would go, yeah, okay. But if you got Max Holloway with his hand in the air saying, where's my title shot? And they go, nah, we're going Ortega instead. Then I think people start scratching their head a little bit. So that's the only reason I stopped short of a guarantee, but it's a heck of a case, man. It's a heck of a case. And again, we still don't know what Ilia Topuria is exactly wanting to do in his schedule. And, originally he was like, I don't even want to fight these guys. I want to fight other people, or they give new names chances, which I think that was just some, promotional blowhard going there. He seems to like to talk a little bit, but I think he'd take the fight. Either one of those.
Yeah. All right. Before we get out of here, did Greg Hardy get knocked out again?
He did. It's not going very well for Greg Hardy.
I mean, are we at the point of saying, dude, you got to hang it up? Like, you are clearly compromised right now. It's scary. Like, regardless of what you think of Greg Hardy and you're happy to see him lose or whatever, like, you don't want to see somebody just keep getting knocked out like this, especially against people we don't know. Yeah,
that's the thing, is it's not even like for instance,
not moving the needle for him or anybody else.
Well, that's it, right? Like, for instance, we were all a little concerned for Francis Ngannou when he dipped his toes in the boxing world, because he was doing it at such a high level, right? And we were all like, man, it's two totally different sports. I hope Francis gets that. I know this is his dream, but it's tough. And then he goes out there and gets flatlined. And we're like, yeah, but, you know, he also does have 30 million reasons to think that it was a pretty good decision on his part to do. That's not what Greg Hardy has been competing for, right? He's not going out there for multi-million-dollar paydays to do it. So, yeah, you start wondering at what point, you know, are the costs of my future, you know, worth, you know, what I'm getting paid for this and what we're doing at this point. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, he made a run at it. And like you said, there's a lot of people that say he didn't even deserve to make that run at it based on his past. But yeah, you are getting to a point now where you wonder, is it worth going out there and doing?
He did deserve the run, though. I mean, he earned it in the cage. He earned it through the Contender Series. I watched him on LFA, saw him fight live in LFA. He earned it, whether you agree with his past transgressions or hopefully disagree. But but, you know, he earned it. It's just, he's changed. You know, that chin has been changed. And, it's I don't like to see it. I hope he's done.
I think it's got to be a real consideration, too. Hey, and you said before we wrap up, I just want to give a shout. If anybody didn't watch CFFC 132, go watch the replay on UFC Fight Back. It won't take you long. I mean, we had so many finishes. It won't take you long to watch. We started out on the main card with a decision, and it was a fun decision at that. It was entertaining. They had a little back and forth. I started to get a little chippy. And then after that, man, it was just finish after finish after finish. And, man, I just want to give a shout-out to everybody that was on that card. But, man, Kyle Dawkins, the long-reigning CFFC champ, the two-time champ, getting it done with his hands. It was so funny. We thought going in, he's going up against a hard-hitting Keenan Patershuk. We're like, man, if he doesn't get this thing to the ground, he's going to be in trouble. Nope. Got it done there. And then in our co-main event, Autumn Norton comes in with she was the underdog, the undefeated Emily Martins, and as a 10-second knockout. Man, flyweights were on fire with Bilal Hassan and Ryan Burgos. So anyway, it was fun. I got to call it. Hanato Moicano was my broadcast partner. We had some fun. So I don't know. I just want to give a shout out. If you didn't watch it, it's a fun card.
I watched it. Well, and like that Dawkins Petershuk fight, like I was very excited for it because, you know, I don't think I've ever reffed Dawkins. I don't think I have.
Right.
I know I've Petershuk, his two CFFC fights that both ended in knockout. I reffed both of them. And, you know, I was telling somebody he tries to take your head off with every shot, right? And he's pretty technical with it. He's got kicks like a mule and he hits so damn hard. And, I just thought he was going to catch him at some point, right? And then I saw the size difference, right?
Dawkins is a big dude.
Dude, huge. Petershuk for a 185er is not the tallest either, right?
He's jacked. He's just not tall.
Jacked to the gills. But, man, that was a fun fight. And you want to see, I mean, Dawkins steps in with a short elbow. Golly. And then just swarms and goes for the kill. And,
It was cool because look, I mean, obviously, look, I want to see good things for Kyle Dawkins. I know how hard he just had a kid. I mean, you see these guys chasing the dream, and he wants to get back to the UFC. But he even said going in, he's like, I know I need to do something special to get the matchmaker's attention. Like I can't just win. And I think honestly, a finish like this probably helped him more than even if he'd have won the way we thought was his best path to victory, right? Which was get this thing to the ground, maybe tire Petershuk out a little bit because he is so jacked. He'll slow down late. This was like a statement type win for Dawkins. So I was happy for him.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was a fun, exciting card. CFFC always brings the action, the production value. Like, even if you just want to go watch the production value, the production value is great. Money Moicano is, he's a rising star on commentary.
He really is, man. It's so fun. I'm actually going to be talking to him later today, as a matter of fact. So stay tuned for that on Grind City Media. We'll be putting that interview out today. So I will talk with my broadcast partner. But yeah, man, I mean, obviously, like CM Punk normally calling the fights. I love CM Punk, man. He has become a good friend in addition to, you know, a great man to work with, and he loves the sport.
He's ultra critical of me at times, though.
He can be a little critical of you at times, but that's CM Punk. What would you expect? Anything less? But to have Hanato Moicano as plan B, basically, is, you know, we got him in the bullpen to, you know, bring in the righty over here when things aren't looking good. Like, that's amazing because he is a rising star. And he's Moicano, man, is just such a good dude, man. He's just such a nice guy. And it's cool to see him. And I mean, impressive to be calling fights in your second language. I mean, that's amazing in its own right. You know what I mean? And he's super entertaining doing it. So I think our next card for CFFC is July 26th in Tampa. And I think if Moicano doesn't get anything booked for a fight or is in the middle of training camp, I think he's going to come out for that one as well, whether Punk's there or not. So that's what we talked about. Since it's right down the road from him, he's in Florida already. So I think we'll have him out for the next one as well. So yeah, love working with Moicano, man. He's amazing. You're
pretty good too.
I appreciate it. Thank you, sir. I do my best. We did a Muay Thai event the second night as well. So we had back-to-backs. That's on the CFFC OnlyFans page as well. We'll see if we get we're working on a couple things in terms of broadcast partners for the Muay Thai as well. But there was some high-level Muay Thai on display as well. So CFFC family just keeps growing.
OnlyFans is trying to grow outside of the realm of what we think it is. I don't know if I can sign up for an OnlyFans. My wife will kill me. She's not going to believe it's to watch combat sports.
It's for work. You got to let her know it's for work. She's
like, why are there a bunch of $4.99s on there then?
That is also for work. I'm writing it off as a work expense. Research. How can I truly understand the capabilities of the platform if I'm not utilizing it to access multiple channels? Therefore, I'm not really able to report
I'm recording
on it
this as
yeah.
Hey, baby, Mr. John Morgan's the best journalist in the game. He says I have to. Here, listen, his own words.
I'll explain it. We'll make it all work. But
I'll just call you in out of the bullpen. Hey, I need your help.
Let me explain it to you. I'll make that happen.
Well, with that, a lot to unpack this episode, and then we repacked it with who's out, who's in. So with that being said, I know what I'm doing this weekend. It's watching the Saudi Arabia card. What about you, John?
Yeah, that's all I'm doing, man. That's what I got on the calendar. I love it. Like I said, here in Las Vegas, it'll start the prelims at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So I'm waking up with a cup. I love that. I can wake up first thing in the morning, get a cup of coffee, and watch fights. I don't have to wait till the end of the night to start watching this action. So great. So yeah, just note the early start time, because if you're used to watching your MMA or UFC on Saturday nights, it'll already be over by the time you tune in. So it's an early start time, and it's on ESPN on the prelims and ABC for the main card, network television. Pay-per-view card that you're not asked being able to pay $1 for.
I love it. With that being said, for John Morgan, I'm Eric McMahon. Enjoy the fights.